Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you understand the true cost of college and tackle the runaway costs of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz, founders of Westface College Planning. Now, your hosts for College Smart Radio, Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz.
Welcome to College Smart Radio. If you have a newborn and you have dreams of sending him to Harvard or UCLA, you have a lot of savings ahead of you. You need to come up with a savings plan early and stick with it for the next 18 years. On today's College Smart Radio program, we're going to discuss all the factors that should be considered when deciding where to save the college funds, and we're going to review the most common methods that parents are using today to save for college and relate those to those key factors that should be important in your savings plan. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. Welcome to our weekly show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is all about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids, with some private schools costing well over $60,000, a UC costing $35,000, and a Cal State University running $25,000. Parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing ways to pay less, tapping into financial aid, and prioritizing your source of funds to make sure you get through the most expensive years of your life. Based on our education and experience, we share our insights with you week in and week out. Mark and I are owners of the San Carlos-based college planning business, Westface College Planning. And we're also owners of Westface Financial and Insurance Services. And we are investment advisory representatives of the Westface Financial Advisory. We host workshops and webinars on financial planning, college financial planning, and consult with parents on a daily basis. In addition to our insights, we bring in experts in many areas of the college process, from counselors, financial professionals, financial aid officers, student coaches, parents, and even students. You'll learn firsthand the ins and outs of how to pay for college and survive financially. And in addition to our show, you can find lots of powerful information on our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have many articles with up-to-date information on navigating the waters of paying for the runaway cost of college. We also have a monthly e-newsletter full of content about college planning. And we have a link to our free community parent workshops and webinars that we host to teach parents about how to pay for college and how the financial aid system really works. So let's get into today's show. On today's College Smart Radio program, we're going to calculate how much parents need to save starting now. We're also going to delve into all the factors that should be considered when deciding on where to save the college funds. The earlier you come up with a savings plan, the better, and you will need to stick to it for many, many years. The first step is to come up with a plan to save. How much do you need to save? The next step is to decide where to save all those funds over the next 2 decades. There are many methods used by families saving for college for their youngsters, including traditional investment and savings account, UGMAs, which are Uniform Gift to Minors accounts, UTMAs, Uniform Transfer to Minors accounts, 529 college savings plans, prepaid tuition plans, and many more. On today's shows, we're going to talk about the many factors that every family should be considering in their decision regarding where to save this money for college. As a CFP, a Certified Financial Planner, I work with families to understand your financial goals, knowing when you will need to use your money and what you're going to be using it for, and then laying out a plan of action with specific steps you need to take to achieve these goals. Let's start with calculating how much a family will need to save to fund their college education. Just to make the numbers easy, let's assume that we're calculating the monthly savings required to fund a college education for a newborn over the next 18 years. So the total cost of attendance at a state university is about $24,000. UC is about $32,000 today, and a private school like the Old Marymount is $57,000. For the calculation, let's start with UC like UCLA or UC Berkeley. That's about $32,000 a year now going to school.
So what traditionally has been the annual inflation for tuition cost and room and board over the last 10 or 15 years?
Well, those numbers have been very high. In fact, the cost of college, and when we talk about the cost of attendance at $32,000, just to remind our audience, that includes tuition, room and board, books, and some miscellaneous fees. Those costs over the last 10 to 15 years have been increasing by 3 to 8% per year. So on average, about 5%, I guess you'd say, college inflation per year.
And is there any sense that that's going to be slowing down in the future years?
There really isn't any sense at all that that's going to be slowing down. Unfortunately, that inflation or the cost of college has been increasing and is expected to continue to increase higher than inflation.
So based on those numbers today, a parent would pay $30,000, $32,000 a year for a UC. So 4 years of that with a little bit of inflation would be about $130,000 if a student was getting started right now. But based on those numbers, the way I would see that is in 18 years from now, if they're looking at a 5% increase, they would need to have a total of somewhere around $300,000 to $320,000 to pay for a UC. Does that make sense to you?
That does make sense, but those numbers are huge. In fact, if we go backwards 18 years, a UC tuition in 1995 was about $4,000 a year, just tuition alone. And today, tuition alone is $13,000 a year. So that's an annual average inflation of about 6% a year. And if we kind of look at reality of how we live every day, and do we think the board would also go up that much in the room and board? If you think about a gallon of gas, if those of us who remember back in 1995, was $1.40, and today it's over $4. So that also is about a 6% rate of inflation. So those numbers are real.
Yeah, inflation is definitely here, and I can't imagine that for room, board, things like that, it wouldn't continue. And based on what you're saying, it sounds like tuitions are going to be going up as well. So in our help for parents to think about how much to save, if we're looking at a total of about $320,000 in 18 years from now, so let's take kind of the best case scenario where we've got a newborn and we're going to start saving. Based on that, and based on a 4.5% annual rate of return, which you could argue is hard to get or not hard to get, depends upon your view of investments. But based on that, it would take about $1,000 a month every month for 18 years to pay for the future cost of that college.
And that's college cost for one student for 18 years. A lot of families aren't even saving $1,000 a month for their own retirement. It's a big number, and that's what people need to understand, how huge it really is.
Absolutely. So then I guess the question gets to be, well, where do we save the money, right?
Absolutely. And that's really why I wanted to bring you in on the show, because I thought you might be able to give us some good perspective on different savings vehicles that are available for families and what features you want to look for in those vehicles.
Sure. And the way I think about it is whether we're saving for a retirement plan, whether we're saving to buy a business, whether we're saving to pay for college, there are some fundamental attributes that we want to look at before we get caught up in all of the details of the various accounts that are out there. And I see a lot of people get kind of start with the end and work their way backwards. And I always like to start at the foundation and work my way up. So when I think about savings for college, which is in this example an expense we're going to have in 18 years from now, there's 4 key components to the sequence of being ready for this. The first is saving. You need to save money, obviously. The second is investing, which is going to be an in-depth conversation. And then the third is, and this isn't obvious, but is it access? Would you want any access to this money along the way? And the fourth is spending. So in this situation, we've got to look at these core foundations of saving, investing, access to the money, and then a spending plan when we get there.
I think that absolutely. And that's really important. And I talk to all my clients about this when they're thinking about where they think they want to save. I think that it's oftentimes people fall into whatever their friends are doing or what's the most common way to save for college. 529s are really popular, but they're not always the best for every family. So let's start with savings.
Sure. When I think about savings, I think a couple of key attributes. One, it should be easy. It shouldn't be hard. There should be an availability of an automatic withdrawal from a checking account, for example, or a very simple process to fund. 2, flexibility. There may be some months when you've got money to put into the plan and other months when you don't, and some months when you've got extra. 3rd, contribution limits. Many of the plans that we talk about, whether they're retirement plans or college plans, often have limits on how much money we can contribute. Now, obviously, if we're funding a $300,000 college for one child, there are some plans out there I know of that have some limitations. So we're going to have to be conscientious of that.
I think it's the contribution limits often people don't think about, because there are some plans that are available, but you can only contribute a couple $1,000s a year. It's a really good point. You're with us on College Smart Radio. We all know that college is expensive and will most likely be some of the most costly years for a family. Understanding how to navigate the college costs to save everywhere you can is a smart thing to know. To help families beyond this radio show, I host community workshops around the Bay Area several times a month that explain the cost of various colleges, how the financial aid system works, and things to consider to prepare yourself for this tremendous expense. You can find my workshop schedule at collegesmartradio.com. We'll be right back with College Smart Radio.
College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Contact our hosts at collegesmartradio.com or call 650-587-1559. Now back to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz. I'm talking with Mark about how much and where to save for college. Mark, we were just talking about the important factors in deciding where to save for college, and we were talking about what's important in a savings plan.
You bet. We talked about the ease of being able to put money into a plan, some flexibility, some contribution limits that we don't want to get caught up in. Also, I think it's a great idea to be able to have outside help. So to have a convenient way for other family members, we're talking about college, other family members, parents to help as well. So any plan that would facilitate some outside contributions are obviously terrific.
More and more families that I talk to are asking those questions. They have aunts, grandparents who want to help contribute for the college for their kids. So having that as part of the plan is really something that families like.
And that's important because I'm going to fast forward a little bit. When we start talking about the plans that are available later on, it's not an all or nothing decision. There's certainly great strategies to spread savings across multiple plans, whether it's retirement, whether it's for college, whether it's for any major expense.
I see the same thing with my clients. Oftentimes they want to invest specifically for college in one special place, and especially if you have limitations on your college plan and you can't use that money anywhere else, you want to make sure you don't put too much money in a plan that's limited with its options as far as where you can be able to spend it. Let's talk a little bit about investments. Investment strategies usually is a part of most people's savings plan.
Yeah, when I think about how people address savings for a future event, it's often first focused on tax treatment, which always confuses me. Taxes are important, but what's also very important is what's going to be your investment strategy. So when I would look at this, for example, I would say, okay, we're going to be saving for 18 years. We're going to be saving a substantial amount of money, and we're going to want some return on our money along the way. Well, we all know that we have to have an opinion and choose some point on the risk spectrum to try to get our rates of return. So, for example, in the math that I did to reach the $320,000, I used a 4.5% tax-free or after-tax annual rate of return. That's what drove that $1,000 a month. So, for example, if somebody said, well, I want to be more conservative than that, I only want to consider or forecast a 3% rate of return, how much money would I have to save? Well, interestingly, you'd have to save more, but not that much more. You'd have to save about $1,170 a month. So not a lot more. But if somebody said, well, hey, wait a minute, I think I want to get a 7% rate of return. I'm interested in not only some fixed income, but some equities or something that's going to make me a higher rate of return. If I got a 7% rate of return, how much would I have to save per month? Well, in that case, if you could get a 7% year in and year out, you would be able to save $750 a month versus $1,000. But here comes the rub. If you plan for a 7% rate of return and you save $750 a month and you end up only getting a 3% rate of return, you would be almost $100,000 short of your goal. And regrettably, I think you would say you see many parents today with 529 plans that did not generate the kind of dollars they had expected because of the equity investment strategy over the last 10 years, which has been a very tough environment.
Yeah, if we look historically for families that had savings plan, now part of it is they were shocked that the cost of college went up so much more than was predicted 18 years ago. But so many of those families, even the ones who believed they were saving the right amount, were shocked by the fact that they didn't have as many their earnings were not as high as they expected, and so they didn't have the compounding effect, and ultimately had. Actually, this is a good example. Easily they were short easily a third of the amount that they expected, because 18 years ago, many investors were advising that you could assume you're going to make a 7% rate of return.
Yeah, that's probably true. 15 years ago, I think most plans were built with 7, 8, 9% rate of returns. And of course, now that we've seen a decade of those returns not happening, there's certainly more caution in forecasting that going forward. So I think the investment strategy is very important to think about before you even get into this plan or that plan. Because when it talks about saving money for something like college, it's a very certain expense for many families. If they have 1, 2, or 3 kids, it's pretty likely maybe 1 or 2 of them are going to go to college, if that's what they're thinking. Therefore, we have a very certain expense, and it's very important to consider your investment strategy for a certain expense, because you don't have any flexibility on when you pay for that expense. The kids get to be 18 years old in 18 years. They don't get to be 18 years old in 19 years or 22 years. It's not like a retirement plan where you can say, you know what, I'm going to work for a few more years. You can't just ask your kid, hey, repeat 11th and 12th grade, would you? My plan didn't quite work out for college. So the expense is very certain, and therefore the risk strategy needs to be managed towards that certainty.
Every family needs to decide how much risk they want to take on this college money, and more families are coming in that I'm talking to are saying, I don't want to take any risk. Wow, I don't want to risk losing some of the principles that I have. So those are going to be part of your decision-making process when you're thinking about where to save for money. The third aspect, Mark, that you mentioned, and that's really important, is access. What do you mean by access to money? Yeah,
what I mean by access to money is just that. So picture this. We're saving for college. We're putting away $10,000, $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. It doesn't take very many years before that's a fairly meaningful amount of money. It's going to be $100,000 pretty quick, and it's going to be $200,000 pretty quick. We're talking about 18 years. And if this is a big part of your overall saving strategy, it is important to consider whether or not you might need or want some access to that money between now and 18 years from now. And I think about small business owners. I don't know of a small business owner that doesn't have an idea a week about how to grow their business, and most of the time they can't do it because they don't have the capital to invest. It's a good idea. It's a proven idea. It's not a risky idea, but they might have a lot of money in a qualified plan for retirement, in their house, and inside a 529 plan, for example, and they might have $1 million in capital, but they don't have access to any of it. So I always advise that one attribute that should be considered is access to money over a long period of time for a savings plan.
So when you're talking access to money, you're actually talking pulling out money partway through. If in year 10 you could use that money and you know you'd be able to put it back in the plan, or be able to use access to that money, or even use it as collateral, that could be that is an area where you could get access to the money easier than if you had to, heaven forbid, borrow from your 401k or not have access to the money.
Yeah, there's two angles to access typically. One is there's an emergency and you need some temporary money. If you don't have access to it, you got to borrow it. And we all know when you borrow money in an emergency, do you get a low interest rate or a high interest rate? A high interest rate. So you can avoid some high interest rates, or if you have an opportunity, a 7% rate of return might seem silly compared to a business opportunity where you can double your money because you've got an opportunity to buy a competitor, for example, or something along those lines. So it's important to think about and talk about when we're developing our strategies.
Now, the fourth, when we talked about the sequence, is saving, investing, access to the money along the way. Or what's your investment strategy? Access to money along the way. And then, okay, when it comes time to spend, we're clearly going to want some flexibility because not everyone's going to know exactly how much they're going to pay for college or that all their children are going to go to college.
That's right. I mean, we certainly don't have a lot of vision to what kids are going to be interested in, to what the world's going to look like in 18 years from now. So having flexibility with some or all of our savings just makes sense. It seems silly to tie up all of your savings in an account that must be used for college spending, for example. And I just think that if there's some of the money in that category, okay. But if it's all in there, boy, you're really doing a lot of tying up of your money to make sure that it's going, or to predict that it's going to go into something that you think is going to happen in 18 years. 18 years is a long time. So I think it's an important thing to talk about. I think it should be talked about with regards to what are the ramifications if the money isn't spent on college, or if the money is spent on college but for different kids, things like that. So that is important as well.
And another factor, Mark, that we haven't even talked about, which is such an important one, is how are each of these savings accounts impacted by the financial aid calculation? And so after-tax money in retirement accounts does not count towards financial aid. 529 accounts do count for financial aid as a parent asset. UGMAs and UTMAs count as children's asset, which are the worst as far as qualifying for financial aid. I've talked about the fact that the first thing families should do is say, is there any way they might qualify for financial aid? And if they do, it's going to be very important to pick the account that has the least impact on their financial aid calculation.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's important to look at all of these aspects. In addition, of course, we also have to look at taxation, which is a whole different discussion for a different day. But that's another important layer that focuses and impacts all of these.
This show, we've talked about some important features that you want to have in your college savings plan. We've talked about the importance of flexibility, contribution limits, investment choices. We haven't talked about the tax impact, but that's going to be important. Access to your money along the way. Plus, you want to make sure you consider the visibility of your accounts in the financial aid calculations. Well, that wraps up another weekly show of College Smart Radio. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to manage the runaway costs of college. You can hear us each week here on KDOW, 1220 AM, Saturdays at 3 p.m. We promise to bring you up-to-date information from the front lines of helping parents deal with the most expensive years of their lives. For a link to a podcast of this show and our prior weekly shows, go to our website, collegesmartradio.com. In addition to the podcast, you'll also find a schedule of our upcoming shows. Make sure you print out or bring up on your tablet our glossary of college planning terms for reference during our future shows. It's a complicated topic to navigate, and without knowing the terms, it's easy to get lost. Also, plan on joining us at one of our Tackling the Runaway Costs of College workshops or webinars. These workshops provide parents with the steps to take right now that can often greatly reduce the cost of college, even if they have little time to prepare. At our workshops, you're going to learn the facts about the real cost of attendance, comparing state versus UC versus private colleges. We'll dispel some myths about financial aid eligibility. You'll be introduced to important college financial terms such as FAFSA, CSS profile, and expected family contribution. And the most value will be that you will start the discovery process to determine how you will pay your share of the college costs. We'll help you plan for and navigate the paying for college process. With over 100,000 Bay Area students applying for college each year, our workshops are popular and we do run out of seats, so you do need to reserve a seat at the workshop. You can do so from the show's website, collegesmartradio.com. College financial planning is just a subset of your overall financial plan. The right choices about how much, when, and where to save for college will have a huge impact on your overall financial plan and retirement picture. The college years really can be the most expensive time for a family. Mark and I work with families every day at Westface College Planning and also at Westface Financial Advisory to help them set up savings plans that fit their unique financial picture, taking into account every family's considered importance for rate of return, access to money, tax consequences, and future financial eligibility. The college planning process is full of difficult questions and potentially expensive pitfalls. Whether your student is already in college, is a senior in high school, or just starting their elementary school years, planning for college can never start too early. Give us a call or reserve a seat in one of our workshops to take the first step on the path to creating a really clear college funding plan now. that will not jeopardize your retirement. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for tuning in to College Smart Radio.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. And join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.
Information presented during today's show is not to be construed as advice meeting the particular needs of any investor. All mention of performance is based on historical experience and should not be assumed that past performance is any indication of future results. Tax and or legal advice is not offered by Mark Guthrie or Beatrice Schultz. Please consult your tax professional for additional guidance regarding tax-related matters. Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz are owners and investor advisor representatives of Westface Financial Advisory. College planning services offered through Westface College Planning. Insurance services offered through Westface Financial and Insurance Services. License number OF 35251. Financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Westface Financial Advisory.